Thanks, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are today. This seminar is going to be focusing on incorporating some of the lean and Kanban approaches in product development throughout product lifecycle management. Again, for those of you that know me, my name is Dr. Sriram Rajagopalan. I'm currently working as Enterprise Agile Evangelist with Inflectra Corporations. And I have my doctoral degree in management and leadership, MBA in management, master's in computer engineering, and electronics and communication bachelorate. I have experience starting off with software engineer, team leader, business analyst, and I have moved along as project manager, scrum master, agile coach, and I have also managed large teams as a director and vice president as well. Number of different certifications to my credentials, which include portfolio management, program management, project management, agile, scrum, risk management, Sarbanes-Oxley, Six Sigma, Black Belt. I'm also an instructional designer, speaker, writer, and author. I have a lot of teaching and training experience in a number of different countries. That's pretty much in a nutshell about me. Today's webinar is part of the 4-part series on our 3rd webinar series. We had started Journey into Agile with Inflectra, and this is the 4th seminar in our 3-part series at this point. And each webinar is approximately 1 hour long, and we will reserve time at the end for questions. The webinars may introduce sometimes a concept using tool. For this particular webinar, I'm not planning to use any specific tool per se. And the 4 seminars that we have talked about are Agile engineering practices for software product development and writing good user stories. We completed those things late last year. And then early this year, we started focusing on patterns to avoid in Agile ceremonies. And today we are concluding that seminar series with incorporating lean and Kanban in product lifecycle management. So according to my experience, I'm sure this is the same with most of you too. Today's world is exploding with speed to market. Competition right now is soaring across the globe in a number of ways. So companies primarily therefore require everyone to come up to speed too fast, which means we are speeding sometimes faster than we should. As a result, we get eventually stuck in product development. Stuck almost to the extent that several factors are missed, like political, economical, societal, technical, legal, ethical, environmental, and democratic elements are getting mixed. As a result of today's regulated industries, we have more regulations and more compliance that threaten our very existence in some organizations in terms of products. So we need to understand the product management a little bit more than quickly jumping to select some framework that worked just because it worked in our previous life and your previous employment and just continue to move forward. So a calculated pause is really necessary. That is where the principles of lean really comes to our rescue. So let's see how that will work. But before that, let's start looking into what product management these days are. According to some numbers that I saw from the State of Product Development report, product managers report to several departments. The most telling story here is that almost 77% of these product managers do not report to the product department at all. There's no product department group where they are reporting. Instead, they come from marketing, engineering, and business, and they do product management in some shape or form. And we have talked about some of these patterns in our previous webinars, right? And so when you take a deeper dive, the position is even more telling. The position that the product manager held last is shaded over here. So, business analyst evolved to become a product manager only 8% of the time. Engineers 13% of the time, marketing 26% of the time. So you can read that statistics over here. So the most pressing thing that we can see right from here is that marketing, engineering, UX design, and project management, they are taking up the lion's share of where product managers are coming from. Right? They're not coming from business analysts. And so these are all very important telling stories. So how much do these people contribute to being the voice of the customer and the voice of the business. Now, particularly when business analysts are not actually developing to be the product manager, these are all telling stories. So let's take a look at what some of those product managers' responsibilities are. Okay, now ignore the title like product manager, product owner, and all those titles within different organizations. But generally, what is product management supposed to do? They are the one that is supposed to set the vision and the strategy for the product. They are supposed to come up with a roadmap of what functionalities they want and prioritize different things as part of that roadmap. They're supposed to actually design the product with a number of things like scalability, stability, maintainability, all those things in mind. It should be user-friendly. And they should continue to do the product development in such a way that it is actually sustainable. They also have to be positioning the market, the product in the market space correctly and appropriately come up with the messages, which is part of product marketing to some extent. And then they should also come up with what's the kind of pricing strategy we need to have for this particular product. What is our game plan for the go-to market? What is the process by which we are going to continuously gather customer insights repeatedly? And customers could be, external customers, internal customers, and many other things, right? So the customer feedback and satisfaction process. And when you are getting a customer, how do you actually onboard the customer? Whether it is external customer or end user or internal customers, however it is. How do you train those customers constantly? How do you keep track of revenue so that the business, the performing organization is able to actually generate some revenue and keep track of how this product is continuing to be a cash cow or not? The product features adoption, how different products are actually coming in and how features are coming in and what features are really relevant. How do I, bring it as part of a portfolio and things like that. And public relations and communication, in terms of larger products that are facing end users, there is a lot more product communication that is really required. And finally, what's the exit strategy? When is time to actually, get out of the market with this product or enter with a different product? All these things are part of product management, right? So we need to truly understand the product life cycle. So when we are looking at the product life cycle, there are 4 important stages, and those are introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. And the number of features that the product managers will be focusing on, number of the span of responsibility actually changes depending upon where they are, right? And so the product manager, regardless of their title, should always focus on where this product fits into the business strategy. The alignment to the business strategy is extremely critical. If we are going to do something else as part of our business strategy, maybe this all the investment that we are trying to do with this existing product should be reviewed. That needs to be constantly always in our mind, right? And so when that is not the case, there is going to be a lot of challenges. Okay, so when you look at the product life cycle, it is important to again emphasize the strategy is the key. Now, in my experience, when organizations don't do this or don't embrace the lean philosophy, empower the product management to do certain things, then there is a lot of challenges that come up. When you don't do that, the opportunity cost of you actually spending time with a different product to develop a different market need, to address a different market need, is completely gone. So we need to actually bring lean concepts here. And so what are some of those important things that we have to focus on? So people have to have competent cross-functional skills. And when they are having the cross-functional skills across the organization, then they lead to higher levels of customer engagement and retention. That's a principle that come from lean. And more product managers see themselves more than just task-oriented people. Rather than they see as the visionary, they are actually able to do a lot more thing in the form of customer interaction and gather more information and make things much more better, sustainable. Product leaders also need to prioritize alignment with how marketing is doing it, how user interface design is coming, how engineering is actually ensuring technical stability, and how the customer success is working out in terms of onboarding and things like that. So they are able to look at number of different things and make sure that things are getting properly prioritized and everybody is properly getting aligned. And finally, having the right expertise in multiple frameworks like Agile, traditional, plan-driven, so many other frameworks that exist. So have multiple frameworks and then choose the appropriate combination of tools for the right kind of product that you are developing and right kind of phase that your product is in. Without you spending time on this, the life cycle, understanding the life cycle concept is truly gone. Okay. Now let's take a look at some of those principles that I'm going to be talking about. So when you look at this, in my humble opinion, there are three important things. First thing is going to be product strategy. I have emphasized that enough at this point, making sure that you understand the business strategy, why the business exists, and why this product exists to serve that particular business vision, and making sure that strategic objectives are getting met, right? And then comes, how do you make sure that you are eliminating waste and maintaining flow so that you can sustain product development continuously, right? As piggybacking right from that word continuously, we have to have a continuous learning mindset within the organization, within the teams, within the individuals, so that we are able to leverage the lessons learned and get better at this. These are three important principles that again come from Lean, and that needs to be incorporated. Okay, so let's take a look at the strategy. When you look at strategy, there are three important elements that I come up with, which is going to be business strategy alignment. The next one is going to be the team competencies. The next one is going to be the ongoing feedback. How do you go about getting these three important elements? Okay, so let's take a look at this. Value stream mapping is one of the critical Lean principles. In fact, by understanding what is absolutely necessary, Lean promotes delivering value as soon as possible, but delay decision-making as late as possible when we are unable to articulate a clear value proposition. So we have to understand what the present state is within our organization or within the customer's need or within the end user that where we are trying to develop a product, and then find out a future state by doing a certain amount of spending time, a certain amount of time in developing these functionality. What does the future state look like? What would the future state entail for them? What's the business need for that? What's the business impact of not doing those things? When you understand those kind of things, you are getting into their value stream mapping. So current value stream mapping, what are the things they are doing, how they are doing, where is bottlenecks, and why certain things are really required. And so you are basically getting into the causes of waste. It could be lack of training, it is unusable product, need more information, the user interface is bad, or I have to have 15 different clicks before I get to this information. So there's a lot of things that people are doing that need not be contributing to your productive value. So analyzing the major causes of waste. And then Lean promotes we need to come down to at least 50% of the time has to be cut. If that's truly the case, what are some of the things that we should do? And from that particular aspect, then you create a future value map. Okay, knowing what I know right now, this is what my proposition is. That's what truly comes up with those features that we have to develop as part of our work, whether it's as part of our Lean. So the focus here is continuous mindset, improvement mindset, which is Kaizen. Kaizen stands for continuous improvement, and most of this Lean terminologies are in Japanese terms, primarily because Lean originated in Toyota plant in Japan, and it's a superset. Lean is a superset of Agile. Lean existed much before Agile came. So that's one of the fundamental approaches that we also have taken in Agile from Lean principles. Okay, so the next one is process check. Now I know Agile says individual and interactions over processes and tools, right? But neither is Agile telling don't worry about process, forget about it, let's just spend the time on individuals and interactions alone. Agile is not saying that. It only says what we value more is individuals interactions rather than processes and tools. They are not saying ignore the process and ignore the tools. But Lean comes with the philosophy of the process aids the way in which the products are getting built, right? So as a result, Lean basically says let's take a look at the process too. because that's the catalyst through which your products are getting built. So when you look at that, it's going to be asking what's working. You want to duplicate success, right? What's really working? So when you look at that, you can come up with multiple games, multiple reviews, and multiple ways of stakeholder engagement. So again, I'm not going to throw some of those lean Japanese terms here, but there is a lot of processes called Gemba walk. So where you are doing nothing more than management by walking around, observe what people are able to do. They may not necessarily be articulating it, but they are actually doing that, and by observing what they are doing, you are able to gather information. So those are all things that we could do. Right? So games, review, and stakeholder engagement. These are all things that we really have to use to find out what is working, so that we are able to actually do this duplicate success. Right? The next one is what's blocking. It could be culture, it could be strategy, it could be some of the processes. So many things can be contributing to this, but trying to truly understand why. Those powerful questions, again, the 5 why comes into the play over here as to why this is working, why this is not working, and asking more root cause analysis questions to be able to come down with concepts. Again, the Ishikawa diagram also came from similar concepts, which contributed to the Six Sigma principles, right? And so you are trying to find out, what are some of those cultural impediments that is prohibiting you to do it? What are some of the lack of vision through the strategy that is inhibiting the team to actually contribute to the shared vision? Or what are some of the processes or the tools that we are currently using that are outdated and not necessarily contributing to the value proposition? And so, we are blocked. Right? We need to understand that particular piece. The third thing is going to be what's not working. When you are looking at what's not working, we have all these frustrations, we have all these lessons learned, but we're not acting on this. We're not actually doing anything to correct these challenges that we are trying to unearth. And so we are becoming the consumer of the problem that we are creating. Right? So having some properly quarterly review or program or product steering committee meetings. So in those kind of meetings, we have to bring these things to make sure that we are addressing process-related problems too. If we don't address the process-related problems, pretty soon the severity will go up, and any amount of priority that you are coming up with in terms of what products you want to develop will not be developed, because the underlying culture, underlying tools, underlying processes are not getting you where you need to go. So that's the learning cycle, the build, measure, and adapt kind of a learning cycle over here, which is also, if you remember, the plan, do, check, act that Deming promoted is also part of the similar approaches over here. So all these things tie together. Okay. Now, what are we truly trying to address over here? There are 3 important things that we are trying to address over here. One is going to be waste. I talked about eliminating waste, and the Japanese term for that is muda. The other one is going to be muri, which is going to be because you don't have these things properly addressed, you are overloading people, you are overloading the systems and tools. If you can only handle 4 tasks, then why give 5 tasks? So those things will not work. And if the system can only handle so much output, trying to actually break it further so that it's functional or not, and trying to find out that it's not working, right? And then mura is unevenness. Like today I will be asked to do 4 tasks. Tomorrow I'll be asked to do 5 tasks. Today the load will be so much. Tomorrow the load will be something else. So it's unpredictable. So I'm not able to come prepared with how I can be very productive today. So my throughput actually reduces. These are the things that we want to truly avoid. And lean comes with additional information about this. And there is a popular term called downtime. It's been around for a lot of time at this point. And I used to create what is called a management debt. Similar to technical debt, management creates a debt by not addressing these things correctly, right? These are going to be standing for defects. If we don't have time for actually, doing all the things that we need, by not necessarily gathering the right requirements or spending enough time for, specifications as to how we can meet these requirements, things like that, we are creating defects, which requires rework and all those things that should be avoided. And then overproduction. We are trying to produce more than what is truly necessary, and so later we'll talk about inventory, and so we build up a lot of inventory, and we don't need more. We don't have we are not using the capacity. And then the waiting time, creating stuff in such a way that you have to wait, even though you have time and things to do, you are not able to act on it because you are waiting for somebody else approval, somebody else process to finish, and all those things, and now you are not properly utilizing the most important resource, time, that is available to you, right? Next one is non-utilization of the talent, not seeking the right experts, not necessarily grooming the people so that you are utilizing the proper talent, proper process, proper anything else, right? So as a result of that, you are actually not contributing to process efficiencies, right? And finally, transportation. This particularly applies in the context of manufacturing. So moving stuff from the raw materials from one place to another place where they are all getting assembled, and then moving all the assembled parts back to the same location, so that you can do some additional thing, or a different location where it is going to be worked on. Now these are all transportation costs that are coming into play. So if there is an opportunity where you can bring everything cohesively together, then it is much better. Oops. The next one is going to be inventory. Like I mentioned, by creating overproduction, or by accumulating a lot of inventory of raw materials and work that you are not really utilizing, it creates a problem. In the software world, you are creating more and more testers, and you are not necessarily having more and more testing, right? And you are not having enough time for the testers when you are trying to move into an automation world. So there is all these things that needs to be coming into the play as well. Then the motion, not necessarily having things in the right place and constantly spending time to look for those things. Even in a simple case, you put stuff in a Word document, but that the Word document was not properly put in the project management information system, and now you are looking into email, you are looking into all the locations and figuring out, and that's all waste of time, right? You are wasting time. And finally, excess processing, doing much more than what is truly necessary, so that you can please the customer and things like that. Now remember, that needs to be that minimum viable product. Now after that, you can focus on the exciters, but that needs to be a process by which you are qualifying and quantifying and starting to work on those processes. This is what is called downtime, and the more you try to avoid these things, the more you are becoming lean, because what you are trying to do is deliver those minimum viable product as soon as possible, but delay things as late as possible when it comes to you not being able to articulate the value and the benefits, right? Now, the second step is going to be focusing a little bit more on the process side. So get a process discipline. And I've been, mentioning some of these things along, but I'm focusing on some additional elements over here. So the process aids the product, which I had already mentioned before. The process is the catalyst upon which the product is getting built on, the structure upon which everything rests on. And then we should be able to conduct experiments. The idea is that you don't know everything. So how do you come up with a mechanism by which you are able to say, will this work or not? Will this approach deliver the value or not? And by experiment, you have to truly also understand that not all experiments will be a successful experiment. So sometimes it may fail. As a result, we have to come up with a fail fast culture, right? So that's also part of some of those lean principles that we have adopted into latest thinking here. And then sustain the development, right? If you don't address the process, you will never be able to sustain, because sustainment is all about benefit sustainment in the operations. So the operations have to keep the lights on. Otherwise, all the features and functionality that you are delivering is not necessarily going to be delivering the value that you need, and there will not be any benefit that may be coming in terms of any consolidated earnings. So you are going to lose on those things. So you want to make sure that you are instilling a process discipline. Now, how do you go about doing this? So focusing primarily from an operation standpoint, strategy to execution, right? So you have to start thinking in terms of a lot of different elements here. So the first thing is going to be forecast. So you have to already have a product roadmap, right? Now, when you have a product roadmap that basically says here, in 1 year from now, we will be, here, And you have to have some leading indicators that you are able to come up with. Leading indicators are most often going to be economic indicators that will tell you where are we, how much more money we will require, how much more time will be required, and what kind of talents will be required to continue to develop this. So you have to start thinking in terms of those leading indicators. And when you are looking at program management and portfolio management, one of the important phases is going to be benefit transition and then benefit sustainment. So those two important phases are coming into play over here in terms of how do you prepare them to succeed, because if they fail, your product is not going to succeed. Right. And then in terms of the progress, that's what most people focus on, is the lagging indicators, like how am I doing? All these burn rate and all those things, the velocity, comparing it to the previous, and all those things are looking at lagging indicators. I said I will deliver this much, what have I delivered? So yours schedule performance index, cost performance index, and all those things that if you are using to use to evaluate these things, those are all status quo indicators. Right. You also have to start look at the queue. Right. How much is the queue actually getting consumed? So you have the backlog of all the items. How much those backlog of items is getting consumed by my team? That could spend a lot of time in terms of the team's maturity level, the ability of their technology, learning you have, and how cross-functional the team members are, and all those things contribute to the work in progress. Or how much the culture is prohibiting the team to continue to move forward, right? That could also be the case. And then the cycle time, the concept of cash. From the time an idea came from customers, you or anybody else, how much you are able to generate, because at the end of the day, we have to have profit coming in, revenue coming in with appropriate margin, so that you are able to sustain the development. Otherwise, things are not going to necessarily be a happy path scenario. Right, you need to look at that cycle time as to how you are able to look into that. And finally, the throughput. How am I actually generating the benefit and the value? So I gave the benefit to the customers, but now I'm also able to see the value in terms of positive contribution in cash inflow to my organization. Right, you need to be able to look at these things. When you are not able to look at all these things, product management is not necessarily succeeding. Right, and in order for product management to succeed, they have to look at all these different things, and especially the progress indicators, work in progress, cycle time, all those things. Lean comes in very nicely, as I talked about, avoiding downtime and all those things. Right, so additional pulse check that they start looking at is a success criteria. So before you start moving into any work, whether it's a task that you have to do, or whether it is a product that you have to develop, whatever be the case, you have to come up with what is the success criteria, right? Absolute acceptance criteria for our product success, sustainment. A lot of the times we come up with, okay, this product works fine, we developed it, we tested it, it meets all the requirements, but where is the sustainability criteria? Once I actually give this to the help desk or to the operation or service desk, or it goes to the end consumers, what is the sustainability criteria? If that needs to be having some kind of a documentation developed, you have to start thinking in terms of those development, because that is delivering value, and you want to deliver value as soon as possible and not delay those decisions at that point. Right, you need to consider that success criteria. The next one is going to be called the entry criteria, which is going to be when things are not considered working. In other words, it's the sky is falling, things are not working, but what is not working? Why is it not working? So trying to truly understand what's the impact assessment. This is where again you are going back to the root cause analysis, the value stream mapping we talked about, and you are trying to truly understand, like, why do you think it's not working? Maybe the system is working as designed, but not enough training is happening, not enough documentation exists, and we didn't onboard you correctly. Or many other things could be contributing to this, but truly understanding what is not working and why it's not working. Right, the next one is going to be the exit criteria. Again, going back to your product life cycle, you may have gone into the mature state, and people are actually trying to look for some additional features and additional functionality, and the technology stack that you used, or the product that you are originally envisioning as to how you have structured it, is no longer the right product to move forward with. Maybe the product is entering into that decline phase. right? So when is the right time to exit this product? Because the longer you do, continue to sustain these kind of products, the more you are spending time and resources in a place where they should not be, because you are missing the market signals, right? So those things we should be looking at. What levers are we using to avoid risk? So risk mitigation process comes in over here. So that's another process that we have to look from a strategic execution standpoint. Now, in terms of execution, there is also another methodology that Lean promotes, which is called a 5S principle. And one of that is to start with SAIRI. It means sorting things in order, right? So reduce distraction. So when people are working on it, they are working only on these things. So I'm not giving like, okay, I need you to work on 3 things. All of them are equal priority. Well, then which one is the most important of the highest priorities? If I have 3 high priorities, which one is the most highest priority? So I cannot do that, right? I need to come up with removing unnecessary distractions and making sure that I'm able to come up with simple criteria to inspect the work and things like that. That's going to be the sort, like, okay, these are all the things that we are going to focus on, right? Then we move into the concept of Seichian. It's going to be setting things in order, like making sure that there are some specific locations, naming conventions, proper folder naming or file naming conventions. In terms of development, making sure that there are some coding practices are developed. Testing practices developed, white box. So all these things you can start coming up with, but basically you are trying to come up with, what are some of those things that we really have to do to make sure that, again, going back to the success criteria that we have to have, and making sure that, quickly accessible documents or frequently accessible documents are, available very quickly for me. Even in some of those things, quick access folders or quick pods and things like that, you can come up with to make sure that things are, quickly available. Right. The next one is going to be Shine. Improve the production process. Improve how the process is working and try to understand those things. Again, this is where the principle speak and Six Sigma will come in, where you can use some of those control charts to find out whether things are stable or whether you are seeing a pattern that is going above the threshold limits. What is the tolerance of different stakeholders to accept these threshold limits? You can start looking into those kind of things and improve the visibility. What is the team working on? What is my queue looking like today? If my people are already trained, the person picks up the next available task. It's not like, okay, only developer can pick this up. Everybody Lean, according to Lean, everybody can do anything, right? That the team should be able to focus on. So the next important task, I'm going to pick it up and start moving on. So you're creating the queue and you are improving that visibility. That's why you come down with, the to do, in progress, or done, or whatever, statuses that you are coming in. That's the principle that Kanban promotes, which is also coming from Lean principles. Right, and we're taking it one step further is going to be the standardization. So as you are doing this, 1 and 2 and 3, the sort, set in order, and shine, you are trying to learn and more and more and more. You are trying to say, all right, what kind of structure should I really have in place so that the team is standard, the workflow is standardized, the processes are standardized, so that anybody can come and start working on it. There is no unnecessary anxiety of overburden that I have to feel, and the responsibilities are all getting much and much clearly delineated. So these are all the things that person can do. If the next task requires this particular thing, this what cannot be done. For instance, it needs to be lifted by some process, and you are not the right person to lift that amount of weight, or do the next detailed design that you have to do. That is not something in your forte. You cannot do it. So you have to go on to the next one. So what are some of the roles and responsibilities that you can develop, right? And finally, it's going to be Shitsuke, which is going to be the sustain, and which is going to be focusing on how do I make sure that the culture is adaptive, culture is learning. So trying to make sure that we are introducing training modules and making sure that there is a sufficient amount of training that people are able to take on and things like that. If you look at some of those continuous development units, professional development units that people are all talking about in different organizations, why do you think we need that? Because you may have gotten a certification, but the reason why these professional development units are required is to continuously show your interest in the investment that you did. So that's what we are talking about over here in terms of how do we bring this. And simple things you can do is, a lunch and learn session. Right, you can do that. You can have expert talk series and within your organization, within your own team, and you can promote those kind of cultural approaches as to how you are able to move forward. So that's the 5 S's methodology that we will talk about in Lean. Okay. Now we are looking into the sustain approach. As we are trying to sustain, the goal of all these things is to develop talent. Again, if I may re-emphasize, Lean philosophy is based upon the principle that anybody can do anything within the team. So everyone should be capable of doing anything. So it's not like I am a developer, I can only do development tasks. I'm a tester, I can only do testing tasks. That's not the way Lean is structured. Lean is structured like this is the work that needs to be done. We are all capable of doing it. And I have so much bandwidth. I'm taking this one, I'm taking next one, I'm taking next one. I think that's how it is structured. So you want to constantly develop talent. As things are coming up, you want to develop people, because people are people. They will not necessarily know everything. So you will have to develop those talent, right? So when you look at this, the skills are coming into the play. So the skills are learned. Right, and skills are learned. So what are some of the things that you have to do? Maybe do some online learning, or promote some content in the learning management system as to how they can do it, or bring an expert advisor and talk, bring a different team member and have them deliver a presentation or something like that. Excuse me. So those kind of things are coming in from the skills aspect. Okay, now creates the opportunity. The more the person gets skilled, the more they have to apply those skills. If they don't apply those skills, it's just going to be things that but you haven't practiced it. So you have to give opportunity for the team to practice something. So here is where somebody else will come and say, all right, you can do this, I'll support you, I will look into this and things like that. So it's self-managed at this point, and the self-managed things come from Lean here. So we are creating those opportunities for people. So we are promoting experiments, like, okay, we are going to have somebody else try this one, and now you are building skill set on that particular person as well. And now as they try this repeatedly, they are developing the competency. They are letting go of some of those fears that I don't know if I can do this. Now they are tried it with some help, and now they are slowly learning to get up, learning to stand, learning to walk, and then learning to run. So you are creating the competencies as to how they can be able to do these things. Now, what's the whole purpose behind this? You are developing talent so that you can sustain the work. So if that person retires, if that person leaves the organization, or if that person takes on a different role within the organization, now your queue does not stop, because you have been constantly developing the talent repeatedly to make sure that the work in progress is not getting a blocker. Right now, the third one is going to be the learning. So this is taking it to our next level of the continuous learning approach, where we are focusing on 3 different stages. Are we learning as an individual? Are we learning as a team? And then are we learning as an organization? So all those 3 important things are coming into the play. Now, when you take a look at this from what I had mentioned before, you had some ideas from individual people's side. Then, as teams are getting formed, you have some things where you are learning as a team, but then you're coming up with processes and tools and all those things. And, the organization also has its own learning curve as to what the product that we want to do, where the business should go, and the market assessment, things like that. So there is a lot of learning happening at different levels. Organization learns differently, individuals learn differently, and the teams learn differently. Now all those things have to come together, because if these things are not coming together, then there is going to be like, I promoted these tools, these processes, things are not moving forward, and there is maybe not enough budget, there is not much of an opportunity that people are able to see for that particular product to develop. So the organization doesn't support, but there needs to be transparency around how we are learning and why we are doing what we are doing. Otherwise, people create those silos and shells, and then things are not working as effectively as they should. Right. So how can we assess that we are learning at this point? Right. So the systems thinking, we have to start understanding the holistic way of how things work together, the people and the process. right? They cannot be diverse. You have to make sure that there is going to be certain amount of people that have some expert knowledge and some learning requirements. At the same time, you have to have processes in place to support those needs, right? That's the systems level thinking, understanding that interdependency, right? And then the personal mastery, regardless of how much I give you as an opportunity and all those things, do you have your own individual commitment to the learning process? If I ask you to just learn something, oh, I'm going to learn because my company asked me to get the certification, that's why I'm learning. I'm not truly interested in whether the certification adds value or not. So then there is no commitment, right? So you need to have your own individual commitment to the learning process. All right, then you are looking at the team learning. Okay, so the more many individuals are learning, the more the team has to learn together, because everybody is going to come up with, I learned this, I learned that, I tried this, this is working, this is not working. So when you are trying to do this, we have to allow other people to learn from our successes as well as from our failures. So we don't want other people to repeat the failures. We don't want other people not to duplicate the success. So how do we make sure that we as a team collectively learns? And how do we make sure that the multiple teams in the organization learns? So that's the avenue that we have to create. And the mental models, how do we actually come up with what's working and what's not working, and have that give and take for, okay, times have changed, this process is not the right one, this tools is not the right one, so let me move on to a different tool. A holistic tool that actually integrates everything else, or a different process that I need to actually do, or maybe a mixture of combination of the tools and processes. So how do I get into that mindset, rather than thinking like it worked for me for the last 15 years in this company, so it should work in this new company too. So instead of that approach, how do we come up with new mental models in our own teams? And then finally, the shared vision. The business is telling this is where we want to go, this is our market's opportunity, and this is why we have identified this particular product, and now we would like you to have your commitment, and the product roadmap comes up, the backlog is getting created, and so everybody commit. In other words, if I'm asked to do something and I don't know how this is going to be valuable to the other people, the end users, then it's not necessarily good. That's not what Lean promotes. Lean basically saying like, let's make sure that we are committing individually to all these things and move forward as a learning organization. So I talked about a few things over here. So one of the important thing is to focus on the individual development plan. This is I call it an IDP, individual development plan. What strengths should I build on? Everybody has different skills and different strengths. And so what should I build on? Because the challenge is market is not standing still. So the longer you wait for somebody else to tell you how to move forward, the quicker you will be replaced. Right? We don't want that to be the case. And this is applicable to process as well as tools. Right? So the next one is going to be what opportunities are you creating? Now that you know certain things and all those things, that needs to be something on your individual development plan that is telling like, how do I contribute value to the team? Right? And then the third one is going to be what will you not consider to move forward with? Right? What are your absolute non-negotiables that you do not want to, take on? So those are things that you truly want to actually, address too. Right? Now, when you take a look at this, technically speaking, this is what a balanced scorecard is supposed to be. So when you are incorporating these principles, you are introducing the concept of, at the end of this year, I will contribute these things which is impacting the financial bottom line. I will do these things for the organization. I will do these things for the customer. I will do these things for my own individual, from learning. And so you need to do that. There needs to be some kind of coaching available at this point to be able to move you forward. Okay. The next one is going to be the team development plan. At the end of the day, I always say together everyone achieves more. That's what, in my humble opinion, team stands for. Right? That's not a expression that I coined. It was already something that was available, and I heard that. And so when you look at this, what you have to start focusing on is the job rotation. So allowing people to actually experiment a few things. People call it job shadowing, job sharing, different terms. But, letting other people to experiment what you are trying to do. Because when you do that, you may actually have creative mindset come in. instead of complaining that certain things are not working, when you are actually going to do this, you will get an appreciation for that and say, well, if I can do, one or two things differently, people that have been doing the same thing repeatedly for a long period of time, they are probably immune to that. And so when somebody else is doing it, not only the complaints are getting resolved, but you are also looking at some creative juices coming in. Right. The next one is going to be the process discipline. At the end of the day, when people have put together a process is not set in stone, but you need to follow the process to be able to say what is working, what is not working, how it could be improved. Process should not become a overhead, but at the end of the day, if you do not follow it, you don't know what to change it, how to modify it. You can't just like that, I'm going to ignore all the processes and do whatever I want. Can't do that, right? There needs to be some kind of a process discipline. So there needs to be some standard operating procedures, some protocols that are developed, some things that you need to follow, right? And then the leadership skills. So as you are trying to do this, everybody becomes everyone's champion. So we are all becoming leaders at this point. So we are promoting this concept of cultural learning, organizational learning, and team learning, and individual learning. And we are actually promoting that and say, what, I heard this in this conference, I tried this in this particular place, why can't we do this, and things like that. So we are looking at both what are some of the things that we should do to develop new products and all those things, but at the same time, what can we do to actually sustain the development that has been happening. It has already happened, right? So that's the team development part. So you're looking at multiple different disciplines over here to see how these concepts can come in. And from an organization perspective, when you look at that, you are looking at a few things over here too. So the first thing is contractual development. Number of times people have some contracts that they have to honor and work on. Client-driven organizations primarily have, this is a statement of work or bill of materials or change order or whatever it is, and they have to adhere to those standards. That's one way people are learning. But the more you are trying to look at all these patterns, you should be able to go to the next level of contextualizing solution. Okay, this customer has this customer has this, that customer has this. How can we actually create a solution, create a proposition that will address all these things so that we can avoid these changes, or we can come up with our own ideas. Now, here is where you are moving from predictive analysis to prescriptive analysis, because you have collected all this data from multiple people across the organization through the way contracts and solutions have been designed for multiple clients. And now you are contextualizing this and say, how can we leverage all these lessons learned across the organization to move forward with a better proposition for a solution? That's where the portfolio comes in. That's where the portfolio of solutions come up right now instead of one single product. Now you are coming up with a creatively leading, the more contextualized solution you are trying to think of, the more you will be looking at what is the market doing. Okay, the needs are coming to me, but what is the market doing? What else the market is telling me that I have not picked up on? Now that is maybe an opportunity that you have not actually tapped. And so you are coming up with a creative solution to either come up with a contextualized solution or to existing contractual development, so that you are doing more, better, cheaper, faster, and still be happier. Right? That's how we are actually moving forward as a learning organization. Okay, so bottom line, we have to be bold, adaptive, and a lifelong learner. And those things are the ones that truly have to come into play in the terms of sustained development. Because if we are not going to do that, we're not able to go back to the product lifecycle and say, we are bold enough right now to say this product is entering this particular stage of the product lifecycle, that we have to actually take our resources and put them into a different product. We are bold enough to come and say that we have to adapt certain new tools and new technologies because our processes are not necessarily working. And we are learning these things to reinvent and invigorate new thought process so that we are able to make our organization better, make the teams better, and make individuals better, eventually. So ultimately, it's all about understanding the philosophy, right? The product strategy, making sure that you truly have commitment to the product strategy and you understand that. from there you have to develop the roadmap, and without a product vision and a product roadmap, we're not moving forward. We are just then doing things at the whims of whatever the customers want, whatever the market needs, and customers are looking to us more of a solutioners, where we are able to come back with ideas. Right. The next one is going to be eliminate waste and maintain flow. How do you continuously maintain the flow within the organization of things getting done? And how do you eliminate the waste? I talked about those Mura, Mura, Muri, and how those 8 things came up, the downtime. And then promote a culture of continuous learning. So all these 3 things are going to be coming together, and these principles are all coming from Lean. And promoted by Kanban. And so we have to adopt these practices in order for us to make the product life cycle better and sustainable. Now I'm coming to the end of my session at this point. So if you have any questions relating to the course or administration aspect of it, please reach out to Tia at marketing@inflectra.com. If you have any questions on some of the content I have described or elaborated, please don't hesitate to let me know. My email is sriram@inflectra.com. And if you have any questions, thoughts, feedback, please don't hesitate to let me know, sriram@inflectra.com. If you have thoughts for future webinars or future things that we can actually do, please email us too. And we will be coming up with another webinar series. So please stay tuned. All right. So now I'm going to open up for questions. So hold on a second. If you have any questions, please post them. I see one question here. How does Spira team promote your concepts? So this is very good. So there are a number of ways, Spira teams looks at this one. So remember, it looks like a holistic whole, the systems thinking. Spira team is a one-stop shop almost for requirements, test cases, defect management, auditability across the whole thing, reporting and everything else. So it's a complete suite. Unlike some additional tools where you have to either use the issues alone or defects alone or requirements alone or test cases alone, and then have multiple ways of linking everything together, right? That's so Spira team supports that. Now the second thing is going to be a shared vision. So you are basically able to come and look at everything from one holistic way. So if you come to the product level dashboard, you are able to have all the transparency about whatever you want. There is no more hidden things at this point. As soon as you have the access to the product, you have everything that all the developers, the testers, everybody can see everything else at this point. So there is a lot, and then it also promotes integration. So at the end of the day, some people have some investment and some commitment towards certain tools, and Spira team actually promotes a lot of integration options to a number of different tools as well. So we are pretty much supporting a lot of these lean principles over here, as I mentioned quickly. But if there is something specific that you have, please don't hesitate to let me know further. So we open this up. All right. So one more question. Will you be making these slides available? Yes, I will be making these slides available after the seminar. There will be a newsletter that will come up, and as part of the newsletter, there will be a link where you can access the slides similar to how you have done before. Okay, third question. I had so many thoughts around how this particular webinar ties together different concepts that my mind is racing. It will take a while for me to distill specific questions because it gave me some great ideas. Great, thank you, Sheila. I really appreciate that feedback. Talk to me, email me, how we can use these ideas to, promote additional concepts or, break it down further or support you in any other way. Thank you very much, Sheila. That was a very nice comment. So I appreciate all your feedback. Please don't hesitate to email me your feedback as well as additional, thoughts that you have for what kind of webinars we can hold. That will be very grateful and I appreciate that. So for now, since people are dropping off and there are not that many questions coming up, I will close the session. Thanks again and have a good one.